I'm going to record it, so if you want to watch it, you can.
Oh, good. You doing it now?
I'm going to do it right now. But I'm not going to draw it because it goes fast. It goes fast with that. Okay.
By the way, I just feel that Mincha Amab is at 8.
7:10.
Oh.
So says the Gemara, Zuhi Labute Mai. The Mishnah is mashma that the case where Levi is going to have no options is the only case where you have something like that, and you can't find another case where the Yavam will be out of luck, meaning that he can't do even with either one. So he says, it's coming to teach me not like Rabbi Yeshua. What's the case of Rabbi Yeshua? The case of Rabbi Yeshua is where you have two brothers, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven is married to Rachel. Shimon is married to Leah, who is a Ketana, who her father is not alive, and so therefore her mother or brother married her off. They're only married midirabanan. Being married midirabanan means that on a Torah level, they're not married, which means on a Torah level, Rachel, when Reuven dies, falls to Shimon, and there's a Zika relationship there. And so at the same time, he's sort of stuck. So says Rabbi Yeshua, because he can't marry Rachel because she is the Achos Ishtoi midirabanan, you can't do Yibum with her. And because you're only married to Leah midirabanan, therefore there is a Zika with Rachel, so therefore his wife, the Ketana Leah is now Achos Kukasai. So for two separate reasons, each one of them are not going to be allowed to stay married to him. So it says Rabbi Yeshua that he has to give a get to Leah to take care of them, to take care of the Kiddushin Derabanan, and he's got to give Chalitza to Rachel because Rachel is his Yevamos who he can't consummate the Yibum with. That's the Shita Rabbi Yeshua. Or it must be our Mishnah by saying Zuhi. Our case is the case where it's Oiloi al Ishtoi ve'Oiloi al Eishes Achiv. Must be that the case of Rabbi Yeshua is not that. Rabbi Yeshua actually said the words in the Gemara later on in Kuftes, said the words Oiloi al Ishtoi ve'Oiloi al Eishes Achiv. Obviously, we don't hold of that. We must hold like the Shita Elo Ike Rebbe Gamliel like Rebbe Eliezer. Either you say like Gamliel that says just wait out Leah, she'll become a Gedolah, and she could either do miyun and uproot the Kedushin Lemafreya, so that now it's like she was never married to Shimon. So Reuven and Rachel, when Reuven dies, Rachel falls cleanly to Shimon and he could do yibum. Or she won't do miyun. Leah will stick around and decide to stay with Shimon Minatayra and will be mafkia de Zika because now she's an Eshes. She's Mama Shimon's wife. As Shimon's wife, well, Rachel clearly can't have a Zika. That's mafkia de Zika. He could stay with Leah. That's Rabbi Gamliel's suggestion. Oh, Rebbe Eliezer is of the opinion, he says a little bit of a different svara. He says you don't need to wait at all, but rather what we do is we go over to the Ketana and we very kindly and swiftly and somewhat sneakily say to her, listen, how about if I give you a lollipop, or maybe I'll encourage her to go ahead and do miyun, therefore uprooting it lemafreya so that he could do even with Rachel. But either way, you see clearly in the Gemara is not like Rabbi Yeshua. Rebbe Eliezer. Dr. Rebbe Eliezer, the beginning of the Gemara from here to the end is going to be discussing Shitas Beishamai in the Mishnah, who said that in the case of where there was a mimer done with, let's see if I can get that there. No, it's not really going to help because it's backwards. Right. So Reuven and Shimon were brothers. Reuven married to Rachel, Shimon married to Leah, and Levi, the third brother, did mimer after Reuven died. Reuven dies, Levi does mimer with Rachel, and now Shimon dies. So Levi on a total level has a Zika bond with both of them, and on a Derabanan level is married to Rachel. So that means Leah's problem for him to deep him with because it's Achos Kukasai and Achos Ishtay Derabanan, and Rachel's a problem because of Achos Kukasai. So it said in the Mishnah that Beishamai says that once you did mimer, it's like you're married, and since it's like you're married, we really view it that Leah's a problem of Yibum because of Achos Kukasai, and therefore, more than that, Leah no longer has a Zika, and Rachel's like his wife, and therefore you do Yibum with Rachel, you stick around. Or Beis Hillel is the one who we just explained, would say that you're sort of out of luck over here because it's Oiloi al Ishta. You can't stay with Rachel because she on a total level is Achos Kukasai, and he can't stay with Leah because it's Achos Ishta. Oiloi al Eishes Achos. So says the Gemara, Zok Rebbe Eliezer, the Shita Beishamai that we just explained holds that he could do Yibum with Rachel. Why? Because the mimer is a much stronger Zika bond, much stronger connection, that it's like Mamora is Kiknusa. So he says, Zok Rebbe Eliezer, Loi Tema Mimer la Beishamai Koinen Kinyan Gomer. Don't say that the mimer is such a strong connection that once you do it, it's like you did Yibam already, and you're completely married, which would mean the Iboy Lafuki Sagila Begita, that if he wanted to get rid of her now, all he would need to get, and he wouldn't require Chalitza. Ella, Maimer Lebei Shamai, Eina Koina, Ella Litchais Bitsara Bilvad. All it does is to say is that now the other woman, Leah in this case, is going to be free to go, that there's no Zika. Meaning, says Beis Shammai, when he does Maimer, just like Yibum or Chalitza would pater the Tzara, really not the Tzara in this case. The Gemara is using the Lashon of Tzara to be referring to the woman who, if she would marry him, she would be a Tzara. But the other woman who falls is going to be Petura Mina Yibum and Mina Chalitza by dint of the fact that he did Maimer with Rachel. That's all it means. So says Rebbe Lazar, the opinion of Beis Shammai is not that Maimer is keknusa, like a deraisa marriage. It's just that on a Torah level, when it comes to the halachas of Yibum, it's mafkia, the zika that exists between Levi and Leah, and now the Maimer with Rachel can now be consummated with Yibum. But Einachanami, if let's say Levi wanted to get rid of her, meaning get rid of Rachel, she's still a Yevama, she still needs Chalitza, and the get's not going to be enough. Says the Gemara, of course, once you do Maimer, you also need get Midrabanan, but Minat Torah, you'll need Chalitza. So says Rebbe Lazar, he's putting a limit on Beis Shammai Shita. Reb Avin, I'll bring you a brisa that supports this idea that Beis Shammai's Shita is not Koine Kinyan Gomer, but rather all it's doing is being mafkia the Zika of Leah. Beis Shammai Yekaimu, what did it say in the brisa? The case is talking about Arba Achin. We're talking about the classic case of Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, and Yehuda. Reuven and Shimon are married to two sisters. Let's say Reuven's married to Rachel, Shimon's married to Leah. So, and Reuven and Shimon died. So Levi and Yehuda, the two surviving brothers, they have problems of Achas Kukasei. So therefore, it said in the Mishnah, Cholzos v'loy misyabmais. But it also said in the Mishnah, what's the halacha if let's say Levi and Yehuda went and they blew the red light and they decided to do Yibam anyways. So now, once each one of them does Yibam, so we said that shouldn't that be allowed? They should be allowed to stay married. So there's a Machlegs Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel said that they have to be Yoitziu. They have to, for sure, get divorced. Beis Shammai said Yekaimu. Beis Shammai said Yekaimu, and the implication is that it's not just that Beis Shammai said Yekaimu, that they don't. I mean, you could understand Beis Shammai in one of two ways. Does Beis Shammai mean Yekaimu? They're allowed to stay together because to begin with it was mutter. There's no reason for them not to do this. Or was Beis Shammai saying, of course, Me'ikar Adin, they shouldn't have done it, but once they did, they're allowed to stay with the Yevamos. Says the Gemara. What does it say? Beis Shammai Omrim Yekaimu in Lichatchila Lai. So what do you see? That it's only b'di'eved if Levi and Yehuda. In the case of the Mishnah with four brothers, and they're the two brothers that are surviving, so the two sisters are falling to Levi and Yehuda. Since each one is Achos Kukasei, says Beis Shammai, you should not do Yibum with either one, but rather you should do Chalitza with both. But if you went ahead and b'di'eved did Yibum, now we say you don't have to get divorced. And again, the Svara makes sense. It's because once you did Yibum, once Levi, let's say, did Yibum with Rachel, and Yehuda did Yibum with Leah, well, now each one of their Yibums is mafkia the zika for the other one, right? So therefore, you're no longer achos kukasei. So therefore, there's really no reason to get divorced. The only reason why you would get divorced is because you did it be'isr. But really, right now, there's no compelling reason to have to get divorced. So says Beis Shammai, you don't have to get divorced. Now says the Gemara the following: Beis Shammai shita is what? Me'ikar adin, you should not have done it because of achos kukasei. But the Eved, you could stick around. But the question is, why was it usher to begin with? Says the Gemara, this is what we're trying to bring a proof now to Rebbe Lazar's limitation on Beis Shammai's statement. If it's true, the reason why in our Mishnah Beis Shammai says that the halacha is that since Maimer is Koine Kinyan Gomer, that's the reason why Levi does not have to worry about Leah. All he can do, he can go ahead and just consummate and finish the Yibum with Rachel, because the Maimer is mafkia, the Zika, not only of Leah, but it's like their mom is married. If that's the case, so then shouldn't you have the ability to use Maimer to get out of the case of Arba Achin? Why don't we say that Levi does Maimer with Rachel, Yehuda does Maimer with Leah, and now by doing Maimer with Rachel, Levi is now no longer a Kuka relationship to Leah, and Yehuda is married to Leah, so therefore he should be able to finish off his Yibum with her. In which case then, why does Beis Shammai say that in that case they have to do Chalitza? Let the halacha be that they could do Yibum after they do Maimer. So the Gemara says, what are you saying? You're saying that's a raya to your tzad Beis Shammai that he doesn't hold that it's Koine Kinyan Gomer? if it's not Koine Kinyan Gomer and all it does is push off the Zika, which is your statement, Elamai, you haven't solved anything, meaning there still is a suggestion in the Mishnah, according to Beis Shammai, as to why it must be that you can't do Yibum, and that is because there must be some other reason. Because according to you also, you should be able to do Maimer to each one of them, and the Maimer of Levi with Rachel will be Mafkia the Zika with Leah, and the Maimer of Leah with the Maimer of Yehuda with Leah will be Mafkia the Zika for Yehuda with Rachel. Elamai, right? Elamai, what are you going to say? Must be that there's a chiluk. That when do we say the Maimer is going to be Mafkia the Zika of the other woman is when the Maimer that you're doing is the Maimer that is the beginning of a Maisa Yibum, right? Ella, Maimer de Hetera Dachi, the Isura Dachi, meaning to say, in the case of our Mishnah, when Levi did Maimer with Rachel, that Maimer was step one in a very normal case of Yibum, right? Reuven and Shimon are brothers, married to sisters. They have a brother, Levi. Reuven dies. And at that moment in time, Levi is doing exactly what he's supposed to do. He does a Maimer with the intent that he's going to finish that off for the Maisa Yibum. Just so happens that Shimon died in between, after the Maimer, before he could do the Yibum, which creates a problem that he can't consummate the Yibum. If that's the case, so the Maimer was a perfectly heter mutter Maimer. He should be doing it. In fact, it's the beginning of an anticipated heter of Yibum. It's only that the Yibum became usher afterwards because Shimon died. So that Maimer, we can say in that moment when it was being done, could be, according to Beis Shammai, a very strong Maimer that is going to be doicha the Zika of Leah. Whereas in the case of the Mishnah of Arba Achin, where there, what are you suggesting? That Levi should do Maimer with Rachel to be Mafkia the Zika of Leah? Well, how would that work? That's a Maimer with a woman who he anyways can't consummate because of the Isser. Remember, she would be Achos Kukaso. In this very moment, the Maimer would make her still Usser. Would be Usser as Achos Kukaso. So therefore, that's a Maimer de Isura. Maybe we'll say that's not Docha. And that'll be your answer as to why it won't work for Dechia. So then says the Gemara, and then Hachanami, the Bryce is not going to be a Raya, that it's out of Kinyan as well. Hachanami, Maimer, even if you say that Beis Shammai's opinion is that the Maimer is a Kinyan Gomer, like they're mamish married, that he shouldn't even need a get, that he shouldn't even need chalitza anymore, and all he'll need is a get, you'll say the Maimer de Hetera Kani, only in our case might that work. The Isur Kani, and therefore there's no Raya from the from the Mishnah of Arba Achin, because the Arba Achin Mishnah, the reason why you can't do Maimer is because that would be a Maimer de Isura. Okay, so what's the first answer of the Gemara? Or what's the first explanation? Says Rabbi Lazar that although Beis Shammai says in the Mishnah that the Maimer is going to work to allow Levi to stay married to Rachel, because it sounds like they're married. He says, don't make the mistake to think it means they're married. It just means that when it comes to the Zika of Leah, it's Mafia Leah Zika, but in all other respects, she's just a regular Yevamos. And therefore, if let's say Levi decided to get rid of Rachel now, he wouldn't need, it wouldn't be enough to give a get. He would still need to do chalitza. In fact, he would need chalitza and a get. Chalitza he'll need for the Raisa level, and Midrabanan, the Maimer, he'll need a get. Fine. Says Ravashi Masni Hachi. He learned up Rabbi Lazar a little bit different. He says, Rabbi Lazar Leitema Maimer Lebeis Shammai Dachit Gemura Vitza Rosa Chalitza Nami Loy Boy. He means that when Beis Shammai says in the Mishnah that the Maimer is going to work, what he means to say is, don't say that what it means is that it removes the Zika completely, in which case then, since it removes the Zika completely, Leah is free to go completely. But rather, v'tzarasa chalitza namilei boy, and also the tzara won't need a chalitza, ela doiche u'mishayeru. It's doiche Leah that she doesn't do yibum, right? Meaning it's doiche Leah Zika b'negei Rachel that he can continue to stay married to her, so that Rachel is no longer achos kukasai. But there is a slight zkuka in the sense that it needs chalitza, right? Ela doiche u'mishayeru. What it does is it says Levi did Maimer with Rachel. Says Beis Shammai he can remain with Rachel, and the other one goes free. Says the Gemara now. Rabbi Elazar is explaining Beis Shammai that really the other one doesn't go free. She still needs a chalitza. The same raya from our Mishnah, the case of 4 Arba Achin, where 2 of them are married to sisters, Reuben and Shimon die, leaving Levi and Yehuda dealing with Rachel and Leah that are sisters. Beis Shammai says, but the Eved, if they went ahead and did Yibum, they don't have to get divorced. Yikaimu in the Chatchila, it's mashma that there was no Eitzel Lechatchila to do Yibum. So says the Gemara, if you say that it's Deichet Chiyah Gemura, then you have an Eitz. It's a Yasa Maimer V'yitcha, it's a Yasa Maimer V'yitcha. Right? And they should have been able to do Yibum. So what do you see? You see a raya that obviously it doesn't mean that it's Deicha Chiyah Gemura. All it means is that it makes it that they're no longer Achos Kukastai. But Lemaisa would still have a problem because since you need Chalitza from the other one, since you need Chalitza from Leah, it's because they're not doichev. So he says like this: since it'll still need chalitza from the other lady, it's going to be considered achos kukasai b'negei the isser of the Mishnah of Daled Achin. But here, once he does maimer with Rachel, now it's going to mean that Leah doesn't go free. She still needs a chalitza, but binogea the halacha that he could stay with Rachel, it'll work. Yeah, and I'll bring you a right because if it's not like that, then why doesn't he have an eitzah for Maimer in the case of the Mishnah? Right. Says the Gemara. Then how do you explain according to this shita of Rav Ashi that Rabbi Elazar is saying in the Mishnah that Beis Shammai Omrim he could stay with Rachel and the other one goes because of Achos Isha? It really sounds like Rachel is completely married to Reuven, and it's not just this quasi status that Leah is still skuka to him. Ella must be, the explanation is like this: Yevama de Chazia lekulu, Chazia lemiktsasa. Since the Yevama Rachel in this case is shaykh to the entire world of Yibum, she could do Yibum, she could do Chalitza. So therefore, Chazia lemiktsasa, Maimer is keknusa, at least in this sense. And the Yevama de loy Chazia lekulu, it must be that a Yevama that is not Chazia lekulu, meaning this is effectively saying the same answer we saw before, that since the Maimer is a Maimer de hetera, meaning Yibum's mutter, that Maimer is considered a Chashav Maimer and it works, whereas the Maimer that's not Chazia lekulu is not going to be Chazia lemiktsasa. Fine. Boy Rabba, Maimer leBeis Shammai nesuin oisa erisnos. A new topic. Says Rabba, when Beis Shammai says you could do Maimer, what practically does that mean? Does that mean that we consider it like you're married like an arusa, or does it mean you're married like an estua? That sounds like a very academic machlekes or academic chakira. What's an afgemina? Where it says, if you're telling me that it means that as a yavam now you'll be able to be made for nedarim, or to be matama to her if you're a kohen, or to yarshin her if she dies, because we're going to treat you like an esua, like she's your nesua. Hashta arusa ba'alma. How could that be? We'll be talking about a regular arusa situation, right? Tadi Rabbi Chia ishtay arusa le'oinen v'le'metamela v'chein hi lo'oinenes v'le'metames lo'i and meis se'ena yereshes meis hu goivik subasa. Right? What did we say? We see over here that with a regular normal case of a man who marries a woman mina Torah, right? There the tzad is, what's the halacha? The halacha is that you're not metame, you don't yarshin, you don't become an einin, she doesn't become an einin. If she dies, you don't yarshin. Meis hu goivik subasa, and if he dies, she gets her ksuba. Avid but maimer mi boy. Are you telling me that if it's only a derabanan marriage, even if it's in a suah, there's a tzad to say that it works? Meaning, what the Gemara says to say like this is, what's your suffix if it's maimer is arusa or it's kinesua? Even if it's kinesua, it's only midrabanan, and if it's only midrabanan, then how could it be that it would be any better than an arusa min haTorah? The Gemara says no. Ve'elo le'inyan mesira lechupa. Right? This is the way the Gemara is understanding the question. What we mean to say is as follows. When a person does mimer, so at this stage of the game, he's done an act that is like Kiddushin, but he is still in a Yibum situation. And one major chiluk between Yibum and Kiddushin is that Yibum is done Balkarcha, and Kiddushin's not. You need the das of the Isha. So now that you've done Maimer, so there's something called, you need a chuppah, right? That's Masura Labiyah, right? Inyan Masira L'chuppah. A chuppah has to be Masura Labiyah, that you have to have the ability to do biyah, and meaning to say not only that, but it has to be something that is with her ratzon. So we say like this. If we say, Nisuin Oisa, do we say that Maimer makes it like a Nisuin, V'loi Boy Masira L'chuppah? You don't require a Masira L'chuppah, in which case then you could even do a bia balkarcha, and the bia will work to be kaina her as his wife completely, and now they're married. A dilma erusin osa, all it does is make her an arusa, and binageh the halacha about whether the nisuin can be done beratzon or balkarcha. Of course, the halacha is going to be upoy masir l'chuppah. You have to do it with a ratzon, meaning that if a person were to do yibam balkarcha, it wouldn't take. Meaning, right? It would still be that all Maimer did is make it so that now, if you did bia, it wouldn't take completely. What would be the nafkamina? The nafkamina is going to be whether all she needs is a get, or if she'll still need chalitza. Meaning, let's say you said if it's like nisuin and the bia is kaina, so then now all she needs is a get. That's all she'll need, no chalitza. Or do you say that no, that the mimer is like an erisin? You still need the Masir l'chuppah to be midaita. Therefore, the balkarcha won't be kaina, and still needs chalitza. That would be the nafkamina. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. What would be the halacha if a person didn't even do mimer at all? The Torah says, right? Avad b'maimer mibaya. You have a tzad to say that you can't be kind of balkarcha. Of course you can. Amarlei in a chanami shani oimer kol oisa maimer b'yavimtoi parcha mimenu zikas yibben v'chala alav zikas erison. Right? Meaning to say there is an argument to go the other way around and say that if you do maimer with your vama, you've taken off the zikas yibum and you've created a zikas erison. So the question is, which one do we say? Do we say that the Knisa l'chuppah needs to be beratzon, or the Knisa l'chuppah doesn't need to be beratzon? Tashma. So it says the Gemara like this: Shemeres yavam, bein yavam echad, bein shnei yavamin. Rabbi Elazar Omer Yafar. This is a Mishnah in Nedarim. The Mishnah in Nedarim tells us that if you have a man whose brother died, left over his wife, and now his wife falls to him in yivam, so it says Rabbi Elazar that let's say she made an eder. The halacha is that he, as the Shemeres yavam, whether he is the only yavam, or if it's him and another brother, he says Yafar, he can go ahead and do a hafaras nadarim. Rabbi Yeshua Omer le'echad, only with one, v'lo l'shnayim. Rabbi Akiva Omer lo le'echad v'lo l'shnayim. V'havinam, and the Gemara said, Bishlam Rabbi Akiva, who's the one who says he can't do any hafaras over eight zika, and that's going to be afilu l'echad, and therefore since there's no zika, you can't consider them kiknusa bechlal, and since there's no kiknusa whatsoever, Avadad Allah is going to be that he can't be made for a nadarim. Li Rabbi Yehoshua, he says, obviously, l'chad yesh zika, l'trei ain't zika. When you have one brother, we'll say that's called a strong enough zika that you can be made for the nadarim, but two brothers means that it's sort of split between the two of you, and so therefore either one of you can't be made for a nadarim. Elul Rabbi Elazar, nihinami de kasavar yesh zika, right? Even though he holds yesh zika, bishlam l'chad mefer. How could it be, according to Rabbi Elazar, that if there are two brothers, she's falling to two brothers, that we're going to allow there to be a hafara? Elamai must be talking. Must be that Maimer was done, and that's the explanation for Rabbi Elazar. For Rabbi Elazar, because since he did Maimer and Ubei Shammai, and it's going the Shita Ubei Shammai that we say Maimer is like this strong level of Maimer. And what do you see? Rabbi Elazar is saying the Amar Maimer Kana Kinyan Gomer. So Yamers Bishlam and Nisuman Oisa. So now we'll say it very simple. Here's the raya. If you say that it's Nisuan Oisa, that makes a ton of sense because Mishum Hachi Mefer, because she's like an Asua to him now, in which case then he can be made for Nadarim like an Asua. But if she's considered like an Arusa, that won't work. Heichi Matzi Mefer. You can't be made for the Nadarim of your Arusa. The Mishnah says, Na'ara HaMe'ura. So when you have a woman who's married to you only as an Arusa, who's young, you see clearly that the father and the husband can be made for the Nadarim, but not the husband himself. So if an Arusa can't be made for an Arus can't be made for Nadarim, and you're telling me that makes him like an Arus, then of course he can be made for the Nadarim. What's the tzad? Elamai must be, you see, that it's Kiknusa like an Asua, and that's why he can be made for the Nadarim. And since he can be made for the Nadarim, according to Beis Shammai's Shita, the way Rabbi Elazar is explaining it, let us be Paishat the Shaila of Maimer, according to Beis Shammai, that it should be considered like Nesuin. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, my Mefer b'shutfis. No. Weiler Rabbi Elazar, when he said Omer Yafer, it does not mean to just the Yavam. It means the Yavam along with the father. Meaning to say that the father, again, we're talking about that it's maybe Oilam will say there's no Maimer, right? And let's say it this way: the Yavam did Maimer, and by doing Maimer, we'll say the Oilam there's no raya that it's kiknusa like an Asua. Maybe it's only like an Arusa. And it just means that he did it along with the father, no different than Anayra Me'urasa. Gemara says, well, Rabbi Elazar, Damar Maimer LeBeis Shammai Nekaina, according to the Shita of Rabbi Elazar that we just said earlier, that Beis Shammai will hold, that he'll hold that the Maimer of Beis Shammai is not a Kaina Kinyan Gomer, rather it's Elo Litches Litzar Bilvad, all it does is be Mafkia the Zika for the second woman. So then, 1 second, according to that Shita over here, Amai made for Bishutvis. Why is it made for Bishutvis? Why does he even have a role to play at all? They're not married, right? When I said that Beis Shammai is not koine kinyan gomer, it just all I meant was that according to Beis Shammai, if you wanted to get rid of the woman that you just did maimer with, it's not enough to give her a get. She's not so far married to you that you all need is a get. Of course, you're going to need chalitza. However, that was the only exception. In all other respects, I said they were married. Did you hear in my words that I was limiting the halacha by nedarim? The only thing I was limiting it by was get. But in all other respects, they're married. And in which case, then, just like you could do hafaras nedarim as an asua, so to over here, that's going to work. Another teretz. Well, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Minicha, is it really good according to Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak? Remember, what was Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak's statement? He was saying that it's mamish kiknusa kinyan gomer. Is that going to make sense now to say that according to Rav Elazar you can be made for the nadar? Mikatani yeferu yofer katani. It doesn't say that they did it. You're saying his answer was that it was done b'shutfus, but it can't be b'shutfus. It says yofer him. We must be talking about a completely separate case. We're talking about a case where the Yavam didn't want to do Yibam, and Sha'am the Bedin, she was Teveh him in Bezdin and said, you got to do, at least give me a Chalitza so I can go free. So Bezdin said, you're going to have to do Yibam, and not only that, you're going to have to cover her bills. And in such a case, it would follow the law that since he has to pay the bills, it would follow Kedurah Pinchas. Meaning to say that if a person is supporting her with his own money, then the halacha is he has the power to be made for nedarim. He can be made for because he supports her, because kol hanaderes al das baila hinaderes. A little bit of a more complicated discussion later on in the Masechta, or actually nedarim. But we'll pause here.